So, hi to all our listeners this week, and thank you for joining us at Breaking Free. As you know, last week we were focusing on connecting with our inner child and nurturing the parts of us that were hurt during our childhood by being brought up by narcissistic parents. Today, we're going to take that healing journey one step further by looking into how these early wounds have impacted then our adult relationships and any relationships we have as adults. So if you grew up with narcissistic parents or a narcissistic parent, you may find that in adulthood, you kind of automatically find yourself either attracting similar personalities or being attracted to these similar personalities. So in our adult relationships. So what we're going to do today is we're going to explore why that is happening, and we're going to try and recognize that pattern and try and break free, as is the head of our podcast. Try and break free from these patterns so that we don't continually keep following the same pattern and having these same kind of toxic relationships that we've learned during our childhood.
In the previous podcasts, we've talked about how growing up with a narcissistic parent conditions us to prioritize others' needs over our own, associate love with control, criticism, or manipulation, and that feeling of unworthiness of unconditional love and acceptance. You talked about that last week, didn't you, Cassie? That,
Yeah,
when your partner said that they loved you, you were like, I'm not worthy of just being
yeah,
loved from me. And when you've spent your childhood, as we have done, trying to earn what should be given freely
yeah,
from your parent. So your parent should be unconditionally loving you because that's a parent's job. When you have spent your childhood trying to earn that love from somebody who withholds it from you, you have now got this unconscious programming that
yeah,
will stay with you for the rest of your life. That being said, it can be changed, but it takes time and it takes work. Because we've got that programming, we are then attracted to people who feel familiar to us. So as we know, narcissistic people are often charming and manipulative, mirroring behaviors that we experienced as children. You know, in my training, when I trained as a therapist, we were given a scenario that if you went to a party and you walked into the room and you didn't know anybody else in the room, you would automatically gravitate to a complete stranger because your unconscious recognized behaviors in your childhood, because that's how the unconscious works. Our unconscious connects with other people's unconscious, and you being conscious at the time, your conscious mind has no idea why you're gravitating towards this person, but that deep-seated unconscious mind has seen something, maybe in their mannerisms or the way they speak, and you automatically gravitate to that person. Now, that can be a good thing,
yeah,
but in this circumstance, it isn't, because we're going back to familiarity. We're going back to what we've experienced as children, and that familiarity, while unhealthy, it's like being drawn into a toxic comfort zone. It's not healthy, but it feels familiar.
yeah. And because of that, because it feels familiar, and it is familiar because it's almost a repetitiveness of being a child, then that will then trigger off almost like a domino effect, all the same actions and reactions that have happened in our childhood relationship with our parent will then happen with this partner, so that we will fall into all of the same things you mentioned before, the people pleasing and the feelings of inadequacy and the feeling of self-doubt. All of those things will just fall into that same trap, and we will perpetuate that behavior. And then in turn, the narcissist will keep exploiting those vulnerabilities, keep it's almost like triggering, their behavior will trigger our behavior, and it'll just continue on in this cycle in which we will be the one that overgives and self-sacrifices and has no boundaries, and it just continues on and on and on. And some of those behaviors we've just mentioned that we exhibit, I'm sure will be they're very familiar to me and you and to anyone else who's been in any kind of relationship with a narcissist. Is first off, you've got people pleasing, and that's
What about
where
you? Don't know enough about
not
that.
at
Sure you
all,
don't.
haven't got a
No,
clue.
no.
And that is just prioritizing the other person's need over our own. It's like not just prioritizing, but almost like pushing your own needs so far down
Yeah.
that you don't even recognize what your needs are after a while. And you do that because you want their approval, because you've been taught as a child that to gain that approval, you need to put the other person's, your parents' needs above your own, that love is conditional. And the condition is that you put them first and that you gain approval off them. And so that just then becomes a behavior that you exhibit during kind of these adult relationships as well. And even when it can become harmful to yourself, you still don't recognize it and still continue on with those kind of the people pleasing. The other one, and this, well, again, is another one that's familiar to me, is the fear of abandonment. So this again, because you've been taught that love is conditional, you feel like you have got to do everything to stop that person from abandoning you. So you do go against maybe what you would want to do, or you don't call people out on things, or you have no boundaries. You don't want to kind of ever get involved in conflict in case that person's like, right, that's it. Well, you argued with me, so I'm off. So you do it works alongside people pleasing really well, in a
Yeah.
bad way, but really well in that that's one of the reasons you do people please is because of your fear of abandonment. So you just constantly won't stand up for yourself because you don't want that person to walk away or say they don't love you because again, you've been taught that love is conditional.
People might say, "Oh well, abandonment is a bit much," but it's not. It's not necessarily physical abandonment
Yeah.
that we experienced. When I think about abandonment and what you're talking about, I think of the silent treatment
Yeah.
Dad gave us because
Yeah.
it was abandonment while not leaving us
Yeah. Like an emotional
without
abandonment.
anybody. It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
A withdrawing from you,
Yeah,
withdrawing their love, withdrawing their connection, withdrawing their communication,
yeah,
so while physically being there in any other way, not being
yeah,
there at all.
yeah.
And the
In the
feeling
most way
that,
you need it.
yes, and the
Yeah,
feeling that leaves you with as a child, then it's the same feeling as an adult. It's the same
yeah,
feeling you get as an adult. That feeling of kind of like total rejection. I would think as well as abandonment, total rejection and just emptiness. And there's a terror that comes with it as well. I don't know if you've ever felt like that,
yeah.
but there's just kind of this, the only way I can, so sometimes it comes up physically for me, and it's like a cold ice block in my stomach. If I think that I've done something or said something that's going to cause that person to withdraw, or not be happy with me or all the things dad did, then I get this like ice cold feeling in my stomach. Some people call it say, "Oh, my stomach drops" or whatever, but I just feel like the whole of my stomach going cold, and so it can bring up physical feelings as well for you, can't it? And that will just want you to pull back in, so you're then scrabbling to do anything that you possibly can to please that person again, to pull them back in so they're not like abandoning you in whatever way, even if it's not a physical way. Also, you can, because of those things, you then have difficulty trusting people because you don't trust that what they say is true. You don't trust that they won't reject you or that they won't give you love that's conditional. But like we were saying last week about it, you're constantly waiting. Well, what's the catch? What strings are attached kind of thing. You don't feel like you can ever really be yourself and they'll still love you, or put your own needs on the same level as theirs, and that they will still love you. So that kind of again comes hand in hand.
To figure out who your own self is.
Yeah, yeah,
Who am I? Who
yeah,
is my own self? Because I've only ever got this attention by pretending to be somebody else in
yeah,
a way. You've had to play a part
yeah,
because this is one of the greatest things that gets lost in your childhood is your true self,
yeah,
what you deserve. Because while you're doing the people pleasing and while you're scrabbling to get that attention, you're doing things that you wouldn't ordinarily do, or
no,
you're doing things that you would do of your own accord, but not when it's demanded of you.
no. And all the while feeling miserable because you know you're really not happy in this relationship. Your kind of gut, your that kind of guttural instinct tells you that you're not happy, but it's a cycle
Yeah,
that you just cannot break
yeah,
until you do this healing work, until you do
yeah,
this looking at things and exploring and learning how to break those cycles.
yeah.
You're miserable. You're like, this isn't happiness.
No,
This relationship doesn't make me happy. But it's trying to then find how you break free of that, isn't it?
it is. Let's talk about that thing now that's on, say, social media all over the place. Red flags, red flags. I'm not going to talk about green flags because this is basically the red flags we're talking about. So let's think about some red flags, because there are probably so many, but I don't want to cover them all. We'll just take a few.
Yeah,
So the obvious ones, I think, is the over the top kind of people kind of just being full on as soon
yeah,
as you meet them. That sort of, I mean, I know it's called love bombing, but not necessarily everyone knows what that means. But it just means when you're in a relationship, or no, not even in a relationship, start a relationship, this person is just like full on. And I don't mean the guy or gal who buys you gifts and buys you flowers and tells you that I'm talking about the you will know, when something is too much. It's like,
yeah.
holy cow, this is the first date or the second date or the third date, and by the fourth date they're madly in love with you, and you're like, huh?
You're my
That was,
soulmate, and yeah,
yeah,
we were meant to be together, and yeah,
it's like all those bloody 90s movies where they meet in the morning and they're getting married in the evening. It always
yeah,
cracks me up when I watch them now, and it's like, dude, you spent 10 minutes with them. How on
yeah,
earth could you possibly be in love with them?
yeah,
And of course, then that goes on to, once they have you in your clutches, the frequent criticism and the devaluation. Then we have the gaslighting and the manipulation. And then we have the lack of accountability and the lack of empathy. They are all huge red flags. And we're not gonna go into these because we have done podcasts on these before. So do please go and have a wee look at the other podcasts we have done. So far, we haven't done loads, so you won't have like massive amounts to sit through to find it. But at the end of the day, if someone's words and their actions don't match up, or they make you question what's going on, or you feel uncomfortable, I mean,
yeah,
trust that gut feeling when oftentimes people get into relationships because they ignore the gut. They
yeah,
kind of go, oh well, maybe this just, and it's sometimes it's hard
yeah,
if you've been in relationships before and you've got that whole, I'm too scared to get in a relationship because this person hurt me, and it can get really confusing, but it's about getting in touch with that intuition again, you know and listening to what your gut is, because your gut doesn't tell lies.
no,
It doesn't. It's the parasympathetic system that goes around your body, and it's your nervous system connecting with your brain. And it is very, very, very clever. Before we had podcasts to tell you not to do silly things, your gut, I mean, the gut is what made the caveman run away from the lion. You know what
yeah,
I mean? It's been there since the beginning of time. Listen to your gut as much as possible. We
yeah,
we know we know these red flags. The more aware you become of them, as we've said in other podcasts, the easier they will be to see when
Yeah.
you meet somebody maybe for the first time, as the time goes on, be aware of what this person is doing and what this person is saying, and does that add up?
Yeah, I think that's the key, isn't it? That the when you can start to recognize and pick up instead of just blindly going into the same pattern we've always been in before,
Yeah,
that's when you can start breaking this cycle.
yeah,
But you have to recognize them first, don't you? Instead
yeah,
of just
absolutely.
and
Yeah,
it's natural to want to just go into the same cycle because like we said before, it's familiar. And I think
yeah,
I had either somebody explained it. I'm probably not going to explain it as well as they did, but it's the trauma that you suffered as a child that the reason you then follow the same patterns is because you're familiar with them, but also because on some level you want it to have a different outcome almost. So you're almost going into the same pattern because you're wanting it to have a different outcome because that's the way you want it. You want to, or your like consciousness wants to heal itself, but that's not the way it's going to heal itself because it's not going to have a different outcome because you're with the same personality to person. So you're the one that's got to consciously have the different outcome, and that's by
yeah,
breaking these cycles. Just going off what you were saying before, that if your gut makes you feel a certain way, so there are other things that you can kind of think about in your relationship or in the beginning of your relationship or just through communication with that person, that can help you to just take a step back and just stop yourself falling into that same old familiar pattern. Just asking yourself about this relationship. Do I feel valued in this relationship as an equal person, or do I constantly almost feel like I'm lower down or I'm on the back foot? And you do feel that. You can't ignore that feeling. You do feel like there's almost like a power imbalance. And if you recognize that, just take a minute to think, hang on, if there's a power imbalance and you're the one that's got the less power and they're the one that's got the more power, that's not a healthy relationship. You should both be equal in that way. So by recognizing that, then you can maybe not get into that relationship at all if you recognize it early enough. Or if you're in that relationship, try and extract yourself from it so you can get
yeah,
into a healthy relationship,
yeah, absolutely.
And then on from that, then what we need to then develop ways that we can be in a healthy relationship. So if you have healthy habits for yourself, it almost, what's the word I want to use? It's almost like a narcissist rejector, isn't it? It's almost like a narcissist won't come anywhere near you if you are the kind of person that's,
Repellent.
yes, that's it, not
Yeah.
rejector.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah. So and do you know what? Sometimes it's not we're not in a relationship with a narcissistic person, but because of the way that we act, it can almost we can almost make it into a power imbalance, not meaning to. So by trying to act in healthier ways, you readdress that and
Yeah,
rebalance the relationship out. So sometimes the person will just bounce off what you're projecting out. So if you're acting like you're less important, if you're constantly people pleasing, people will just go with the flow, won't they? And
yeah,
maybe our partner isn't like aware enough to realize and
yeah,
help us. So we need to do that for ourselves. We need to start making healthy choices, intentional choices, and healthy choices in our relationships. For example, prioritizing mutual respect. So it's not just that they're the most important and you respect them and that's it, that you expect some respect back for yourself and being emotionally safe as well. One of the ways we can make these intentional choices in our relationships is by if we promote a mutual respect with our partner where we're both getting respect. We're not just respecting them and
yeah,
we're not being respected or our choices aren't being respected. And also emotional safety as well. You know how you feel when you are feeling emotionally safe with somebody. You feel comfortable in your own skin. you feel comfortable saying how you feel, and you're not worried at all that you're going to be jeered at for feeling that way, or someone isn't going to call into question you feeling the way you're feeling. And you can state it clearly and have an adult conversation with someone about how you're both feeling, and not having your, well, like Pamela mentioned earlier about not knowing really where you are when you're in a relationship with a narcissist. You don't know what's up, what's down, what's right, what's left, because they have you questioning your reality, not feeling that way, standing up for what you actually feel. And then also, well, alongside of that is then practicing clear communication and being assertive in your relationship, which can be really hard if you're a people pleaser. It's really hard to say, well, actually, I don't think I want to do that, or actually, I'd like to do this, and it doesn't mean being argumentative, and there doesn't need to be conflict. It just means stating how you feel, or stating what you would like, stating your needs, because that's another one, is constantly feeling like your needs, you're not important enough for your needs to be met. Just making sure that you're taking the time for yourself to think about what you need, and then communicating that to your partner at the same time. And not just communicating it, but expecting fully that those needs should be important to your partner and should be met by your partner as well. And then, of course, our boundaries, setting and reinforcing our boundaries, which is difficult. We've talked about boundaries before on the podcast, haven't we? And how you can just start small, just a little thing, but just kind of setting them and then holding them if someone tries to cross over those boundaries. And every time you hold your boundaries or set another boundary, you get better and better at doing it, and you get stronger and stronger at doing it. All of those things then help you to maintain a healthy relationship. And probably the more you work at them and the more familiar they become to you, pardon me, and become second nature to you, then in actual fact, if you, like we said before, if you meet a narcissist and you start kind of chatting with them, and they won't want to get in a relationship with you, because you're not a people pleaser, and you are assertive, and you do have healthy boundaries which you set, and they'll know that you're not easy to manipulate then, and it's highly unlikely that you will, and even if you do, you will recognize it pretty early on, and then just by your naturally standing by your healthy kind of beliefs about yourself and beliefs of what a healthy relationship should look like, nothing will come of it really, because you just won't work well together, will you? So,
What we're saying, people are going, well, that's all well and good, but I don't know whether I can, I don't know whether I can do that. I can't stand up for myself. And this is where the work comes in,
yeah,
because no one is coming to save you. And I know that sounds really harsh, but no one can do this work for you.
no,
As children, if you were raised by a narcissistic parent, it doesn't matter what you experienced, we were given a crappy hand. You have two choices from here. You can, one, continue doing what you've always done and then get the results you've always got. Or two, decide to change yourself so you have a better quality of life and have a better quality of relationships and have a happier, more fulfilled experience. Because I mean, I'm 51 years of age. It took me ages, far too long, as far as I'm concerned, to be able to get to where I should have been.
yeah,
But we need to start somewhere. We need to start building our self-worth. We need to understand how important self-esteem is. Because if you've been raised, like we say, in that situation, your self-esteem is on the floor
yeah,
because you have no confidence in yourself. And the confidence that you do have, maybe you've garnered from different circumstances or situations. But the only way you're going to be able to do all of those things that you've just talked about, setting those boundaries and putting assertiveness in place, of course, practicing them, yes, absolutely, and starting small. But you can start small with building your self-esteem as well. It's those small things that we've talked about before, journaling, meditation, affirmations, those things that you looking yourself in the mirror and going, I am fucking amazing.
Yeah.
Whether you believe it or not, it doesn't matter. Your body. I was actually watching a video today and oh, his name has gone out of my head. He's a scientist, Otto Moto. If you know who he is, you'll know who I'm talking about. And he did experiments with water and he got several jars of water, right? Now take into consideration you're 70% water,
Yeah.
okay? He did these experiments with jars of water and he wrote different words and stuck them on the jars. And on one jar he put love, and on one another jar he put care, on another jar he put thank you, and another jar he put hate, and another jar he put ugly, and another jar he put horrid. They're probably not exactly the same right words, but you get the point.
Yeah.
He then froze that water and examined the water crystals, and the jars that had those lovely words written on them, the water crystals were gorgeous. They were like beautiful creations. They looked like artwork. The jars that had those horrible words on them were distorted and ugly water crystals.
No way.
Yes, way. Like his work is well kind of documented.
Yeah.
So if water can react to how it's being treated, how much more do you think your body reacts to what you say to it?
Yeah.
Because it all has, I mean, we don't know the half of what our body is capable of, or the half of what our words when we speak to ourselves actually do. You talked about this last week when you talked about the affirmations that you have been saying to yourself and how much that has changed, which so impressed me so much
Yeah.
because I know how hard you are on yourself. And the fact that you've used the affirmations and the fact that you now don't talk to yourself or don't allow those words to come to you. You don't speak them
Yeah.
out loud, at least, which is a process of stopping it slowly and surely. A bit like you said earlier about habits. But our self-esteem, if you think about it, when you get to a point where you value yourself
Yeah.
and you have that respect for yourself, you're not going to let anybody else disrespect you.
No. What we were saying before about attracting the unhealthy relationships, if you are changing your own belief system and your own patterns of behavior, then that will attract something different for you. It means that
Absolutely.
that will attract something more healthy.
It would. It would. It really will. It does. I mean, I'm an attachment to that. I
Yeah.
really am an attachment, and so are you. When you believe you're worthy of unconditional love, you won't tolerate people who don't
Yeah.
believe that. And again, absolutely, you're going to attract a much healthier person to you
Yeah.
because in that, your unconscious now
Yeah.
has changed.
Yeah.
So that familiarity is now because your brain, as science will tell you, your brain is always changing. You can change your brain. All of this, oh, well, I was born like this and I can't change it. That's rubbish,
Yeah.
absolute rubbish. And maybe that's something people have been told, but it's not true. It's totally not true. You can change anything that you believe, but it takes work. Another thing that would be helpful is therapy. I've talked about this before, and yes, as a therapist, I'm gonna, spout that because I know it works from both perspectives because I've been in both chairs. I've been
Yeah.
the therapist and I've been the client. And I can say without a shadow of a doubt, I wouldn't be where I am now without therapy. Therapy, you don't need to have therapy, but I found it extremely helpful.
Yeah.
I think if everyone went for therapy, it would do them a world of good. But well, I do, I really do, because we just carry so much
We
stuff
do.
now. We really do. It's so hard. The therapist can help you unravel everything because what I found both in therapy and as a therapist is most of our problems is the confusion in our head because it's stuck in our head.
Yeah.
And oftentimes I found my clients, because I would work psychodynamically and I would sit there and listen to my client talking and they'd ask questions. And as they were talking about whatever the issue was, they found themselves answering their own questions
Yeah.
as they were talking it out. And it was almost like they just needed a sounding board to be there. So if therapy is not doable, a good trusting friend,
Yeah.
someone you can, or family member, someone you can sit down and say, I don't need you to say anything. I just need you to sit and listen to me
Listen to
waffle
me.
it on
Yeah.
and talking it out. I mean, it's been proven for many, many years how influential talking about your feelings is and
Yeah.
how beneficial talking about your feelings is. You know, there are 1,001 charities out there that encourage that, and they're there for a reason because medically and scientifically, it's beneficial for people who are struggling with any kind of issues. So I would say therapy, talking to a good friend, or even working it on yourself. Just working on yourself. You know, I'm the poster girl for what not to do because it took me to suffer 4 really bad relationships before I began to understand what I was tolerating. I had no self-awareness. My self-awareness was non-existent. When I realized, once I was in the relationships, I realized too late, you know, that I was in a toxic relationship. I know for a fact that back then I didn't realize that they were narcissistic relationships
Yeah.
because I didn't know what narcissism was back then. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, again, we're talking, my first relationship was when I was 18 and a half, and I was a fixer. And I struggled not to want to fix people. You know, if it was a toxic relationship, we can make it better. We can fix it. I can try. I can do everything I can, you know, which goes back to what you said earlier when you said about wanting to have that experience again for it to turn out differently.
Yeah.
And yeah, thanks to dad, I had no self-worth and believed, just like you know, last week, that I didn't deserve any better, that these relationships were normal, really. You know, especially when
Yeah.
I was younger, I believed that those relationships were normal because I had not had a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
My first partner love bombed me and then discarded me. My second partner was physically abusive. My third partner was abusive in other ways. And my fourth partner was controlling and separated me from my support system. So I could look back and go, oh my God, and have lots of regrets. But I have moved on so much in my life that I don't see the point of regrets anymore. I would have been one of these people that would have gone over and over and over and over. I should have done this and I should have done this and beaten myself up. But you can't go back and change it. And again, that's taken some work for me to get to the point where I can now view my past in that
Yeah.
lens. I can't change it, but I can learn from it, which is what I did. I realized, first of all, it wasn't my job to try and fix these people. Second, that it wasn't possible. You know, I wasn't the problem, they were. And if they're not going to change, they don't want to change, they're not going to change.
Yeah.
And third, and most important of all, I realized that I deserved better.
Yeah.
And that was the turning point for me, is that I realized that I deserved to be treated better, even if that meant being on my own,
Yeah.
even if that meant me treating myself better and not with somebody else. So when I entered the last toxic relationship I would ever have, I was on my own for quite some time,
Yeah.
deciding to work on me, deciding on who I wanted to be. And I did the work. I spent the time building my self-esteem, building my confidence, using meditation, using journaling, listening to audiobooks, and obviously talking it out in therapy. I'm now at a place where I can say, if I don't like it, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
I don't care.
That's
You know,
simple. Yeah.
I just, you know, and not that rudely. That maybe come
No,
across
no.
as really harsh, but I don't mean that. I'm not manipulated into doing things
Yeah.
now. I'm not guilt tripped into doing things now. I don't do things out of fear of what the consequences might be if I don't do them. And I'm just able to speak my truth and not tolerate bullshit from anybody. That being said, I'm a good friend. I'm a good sister. I'm a good wife. I'm a good mother. I'm there for people when they need me,
Yeah.
but I'm there for people who need me because they need me,
Yeah.
not because I feel like I have to be there for them
Yeah.
because they're manipulating me and using me for their own ends.
Yeah, it's kind of it's you're there for them in in the capacity that you're able to be, and they're not you. I'm trying to think of the thing somebody used, the saying, it was something empathy, something to do with, like you said, manipulating your empathy. So their actions or saying things to deliberately manipulate your empathy to cause you to kind of run to them kind of thing, whereas you do it for people who genuinely need you. And you can tell the difference, and that's the key, isn't it? Yeah,
Oh yeah, clear as day now.
yeah. Well, I know for me, it's been more on like a friendship level. I think I went with my first husband, went so far away from anything that my dad was like my dad that it went completely in the opposite direction, which didn't go right either, but there you go. But I know on a friendship level, I've got some really good friends now, but I have had ch some bad choices in friends. Yeah, a couple, and one springs to mind was a friend, and everything was on her terms, and she was in charge of everything, and she would. I mean, and again, I say this, but looking back in the knowledge now that it was the fact that I was a people pleaser and had no boundaries and didn't stand up for myself and didn't believe I was worth standing up for, that she was able to railroad me. Had I stood up to her, I don't know what would have happened, but well, I know what happened because I've stood up to her. She decided everything in our relationship. She decided the where and the when and the how and the even to the point of how I was bringing my children up was wrong, or, how they were behaving was wrong. Meanwhile, she wasn't the mother of the year herself, kind of thing, one of those very hypocritical people, until the point where she disagreed with my choice of partner when I got together with my current partner. Disagreed with it to the point where she just point blank over the phone wished me lots of terrible things in my life because I was with with this person, and kind of just say that that wasn't based on the fact that she thought that this person was any danger to me or it was on a healthy relationship or anything like that. It was just she thought I'd chose the wrong person. And yeah, at that point, when she said that, I just thought, that's it. I can't do this anymore. And I actually hung up the phone on her, and I've never spoken to her since, because I just thought, I've got to step back away from this, because the woman's insane. She was such a control freak, and a narcissist hand in hand. And she did actually start like a smear campaign, which narcissists will do, by posting my picture with hers on Facebook. She blocked me first on social media, so I couldn't actually see. And it was a mutual friend that told me about it, and she'd posted a photo of her and me, and then she basically had just said, "Oh, it's such a shame that this I was such a good friend to this person, and they've gone off and done this, that, and the other," and so that all of people that was friends with her could see, but they were also friends with me. So, and thankfully they came to me and said, but I mean, that's typical narcissist behavior, that they would smear you to other people, to try and kind of make you look bad because you've taken a stand against them. And so I lost her as a friend for having boundaries and for saying, "No, I'm not putting up with this anymore." But it was no great loss, because now I don't have to deal with that kind of behavior. So, and yeah, I am actually a bit more careful about my friends now. I don't think I've got anyone in my life that's like her. My friends now are very close and very similar personality to me, and respect me, and love me for who I am, and wouldn't even think of trying to tell me what to do, or are very respectful and very, on an equal footing, with mutual respect and love and care for each other. So I have learned absolutely in the friend department to kind of recognize those people when they come along and be like, "Oh, no thanks," and sidestep.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's it, isn't it? It's finding healthier dynamics
Yeah,
because as we've said before, you are less likely to tolerate a narcissist if you believe you're worthy of love and
yeah,
respect. You believed you were worthy of far more than you were getting out of the
yeah,
relationship. Because I remember that I never met the woman, but I remembered the relationship that there are many times that we had a conversation about
yeah,
her and the way she was. And yes, it was a very one-sided relationship. And
yeah,
she would say jump and you would say how high. I couldn't have been more delighted when you hung up on her, and I was like, yes.
yeah.
Uh, so when we think of healthier dynamics, we've talked about this and we're going to flog them to death. And I don't care because I still think they are the most important things that will help you. So we've obviously a good support system. If you have people who know you well enough, who you can speak to with ease, and you're not going to get judged. They are treasures. Keep hold of them.
Yeah.
Handcuff them to you if you like. I don't care. Just like don't let them go. We talked about your affirmations and how beneficial they have been to you,
Yeah.
and how they've been. I mean, you go online, you can hear a million different people saying the same things. You've got the naysayers, affirmations don't work. Well, that doctor who did the science on the jaws of the water would disagree with you
Yeah.
because I mean it's just amazing. Look it up when we're finished
Will
here.
do.
Look it up, and
Will
there
do.
are there are images online. Otto Moto, or I think Moto is definitely his last name. And just put in experiments with words and water or something like that. But the images of the words with love and kindness, and the images with the words of hatred and horribleness, like unbelievable. The difference is unbelievable. So the words we say to ourselves, whether that be when you're wandering around cleaning the kitchen and dropping forks, or talking to yourself in the mirror, or sitting just quietly in a chair and maybe repeating affirmations to yourself of how worthy you are and how you deserve respect and how loved you are, makes a difference, not just psychologically, but physiologically to yourself.
Yeah.
We're 70% water. If you don't want ugly water crystals in your body, say nice things. That's my conclusion to
That's
that.
and a very good one too.
And a very good one too. Be good to yourself. And of course, my favorites, meditation and journaling, because that is like you, affirmations with you, meditation and journaling for me have been my go-to and still are my go-to. I have books and books and books filled with scribbles that I probably cannot read because I was in maybe different states of emotional rawr when I wrote them.
Yeah.
But you know what? It was on the page and not in me, so it
Yeah,
helped
that's key.
tremendously.
Yeah.
So you can choose one of these things or choose all of them, but or find something else. Find something. If these tools are not something that you would subscribe to, search for something else that you know is going to help with your self-esteem and going to lift you and build you up to the person you deserve to be, not the person you feel you were because of somebody else's behavior and actions. So that's us for today. We'd like to encourage all our listeners to take a look at your current relationship and maybe ask yourself these questions. Is the person I'm with, does this person respect my boundaries? Do I feel heard and valued in this relationship? Am I sacrificing my well-being to keep this relationship intact? They're really important questions,
Yeah.
and they're really eye-opening questions to sit and just ponder over. Because does this person respect my boundaries? If you're going to know that if they walk in and lift your phone without asking, or if you have no personal space, or if you can't set a boundary that they're not going to cross, you know the answer to that. Ask poignant questions about your relationship and be honest with the answers.
Yeah.
What you do with that afterwards is up to you. I would hope that if the answers are not the ones that you want, your next step is where do I go from here? Because staying in these relationships, there's no future in them, and
No.
you're definitely no future for your happiness.
Yeah.
If you've enjoyed this video, please give us a like and a thumbs up and subscribe. Callie, she doesn't give us a thumbs up. And also, feel free to share your stories with us in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear if you have been able to leave a toxic relationship and find a healthier connection, because just encourages us to keep on doing what we're doing, and it just makes us like we're just delighted
Yeah.
that you have found somewhere where you belong,
Yeah.
to be treated better.
Yeah.
So next week, we're going to dive into the fear of failure, dun, 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 and how to define success on your own terms. Until then, remember you are worthy of love and respect, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.